Welcome to This Week in X. We are here to discuss X Factor number 5, released this week on the 2nd of December. Spoiler warning, we're going to discuss every single plot beat in this issue, as well as what's happening in the other X-Men comics out this week and out every week up until this week, as well as some other things in the Marvel Universe. So you have been duly warned, and we're going to jump right in. The first thing I think we can dig into with this X Factor issue, we mentioned that it's Aftermath. Let's talk about where it fits in, not just in terms of like continuity, but where it fits in with what's just happening on the island right now, right? Because there's an Aftermath aspect from X of Swords. We're talking about things that happened with Rockslide. We're talking about other resurrections that happened, and we see the Aftermath of Hellions this week, all the way up through mentioning other resurrections we haven't even seen hinted at yet. So it feels like that this actually, it kind of spans a little bit of time. Am I the only one that really got that sense, or did you two feel that way too?
Definitely for me, I think, because when we start the issue, we started the issue with a little bit of a flashback. It connects, not a flashback, but it connects almost directly to X Factor 3.
Right, it kind of reminds us like where we left off without actually being a recap, which I thought was really clever, actually. Yeah.
And then, of course, we saw 5, the 5 what they call top streamers in Mojoverse, and now we have the appearance of one of them, which is a very 90s character, Adam X.
I love him. Non-ironically. I'm not the person behind the Adam X Twitter account, but I do love him very much.
But
sounds like something someone who was
the Summer's brother.
I hope he's the 6th or 7th Summer brother. He was originally, Fabian Nceza originally maybe thought he might be the 3rd Summers brother. But then, years later we got Gabriel Summers, but who knows? There could be 4 or 5, 6, but we'll see in that X-Men Legends series that's coming out next year who the final Summers brother is. So I agree.
But I sort of digress a little bit.
Yeah.
To answer your question, yes, I felt that it spans a lot because, it connects to X Factor, the end of X Factor 3, it connects to the end of X Factor 4, and there are definitely bits that comes like after the entire X of Swords destruction. So definitely goes through the whole gamut, I think, of timeline for me.
Yeah, it feels like even though narratively it reads as though it could happen in a day, there's different indications that different amounts of time have passed, and I just think in a really clever way. Like Lorna at one point says, well, I'm not going to go through all the messy details of the past few weeks. And I think it's just effective without dwelling on it too long that Leah Williams sets up this kind of amorphous status quo where we can kind of cram as many things from the other books in as we need to in order to have this fit. It's a sign of somebody who's good at playing in the continuity sandbox, I think.
Yeah. And there's also the cut to the Mutant impromptu prom, which kind of does seem like there's some like thought and organization that went into that speaks to time being passed and what have you.
Yeah, I agree, because I kind of felt like what in the issue has led up to this, and then it just reinforced for me of like time is just passing. This doesn't all have to be in one chronological day necessarily.
And it's good for that because it is just so much about the world and just the culture of this whole island that you just get to see them just living and existing and kind of partying, and it is like a kind of relaxing deep breath after all the sword fighting and the crossover.
And these are kids that I would say, like, would you call them like the 3rd or the 4th generations of mutants, young mutants that usually get left out when Marvel reboots the X titles, right? Because people will be, we want the classic team and the all new, the Storm team, right? And then you have the New Mutants, and then you have the Gen Xers. But these kids are usually sort of like brushed aside, or you pick one out, focus on him or her, or you have Rockslide.
Or Rockslide.
Oh, well, we're going to get there in a second. First of all, as to what generation they are, I tried to figure that out on Twitter not that long ago, and it's a lot more complex than you would think, because it depends on like how many in between generations people are counting. It got very heated very quickly. So the other thing I want to talk about, though, is just the sheer size of the cast we get in this issue, right? And what Leah Williams is doing with that. So we have this premise of X Factor themselves, and they start out as the proof of death squad, right? They're there to kind of grease the wheels of resurrection by saying we can confirm such a person needs to be resurrected. But that necessarily means the 5 are members of this cast as well. And Leah now has written, I think, more scenes with the 5 in these 5 issues than anybody else has written since we've come back from Hoxbox. And now, on top of that, we've layered all of the cast of characters of all these X-Kids, and all of the cast of characters of whoever are involved in their investigation of whoever has died, which so far has been kind of like X-Kid adjacent, but then we have the folks that were Mojo World, and then we have also the cliffhanger from this issue. So all of a sudden, this really does, to Harry's point, feel like the community book we were missing. And I don't think at any point for me, it got really like hurried. Like I really felt like I got great moments with all these characters. But before we get into all the character moments, I want to come back to the status quo. The 5 kind of seem like they're asking X Factor to do more now. Before it was just tell us when it's okay to resurrect people, but they almost come to them in this first scene to say like, can we have the go ahead to turn resurrections back on after this whole X of Swords Otherworld thing? So do you think the 5 is like deliberately trying to look for an outside body so that they're less like culpable in this situation?
Harry, what do you think?
I mean,
because I have something to say.
Okay. I mean, yeah, they definitely have some trepidation. They're also, well, I'm thinking of Hope and Egg, but they are younger characters. So it makes sense that a few of them are looking up to some people with more experience, and especially when they already did it once and Rockslide turned into like a newborn ghost baby. And, so that does make sense to me. And it is cool because it gives the X Factor a feeling of authority and a feeling of importance in this ecosystem that's being established, in these books, which is pretty cool.
No, I mean, definitely. I mean, I especially like that scene. I mean, my answer to that would be, of course, because, Egg was the one who went on and said that, the eggs could be tainted. And then Hope was the one who gave the go ahead to destroy all the eggs. And, there's one particular scene here where Hope and Egg glance at each other when Hope says, the full cache of fresh eggs is now ready for resurrection, as if like, we were at fault, that kind of thing. I mean, it was kind of an unspoken glance, but I thought the art by Dave Baldeon, is that how you pronounce his last name?
I think so.
I hope so.
Is pretty amazing because it's a little bit cartoony, but it's very expressive. And I think his art is very dense. They are packed full of things, but at no time, does it distract from the storytelling.
It's kind of a perfect balance between kind of cartooniness and some more serious material. Like we haven't really mentioned it, but that beginning scene with the mutant on Mojo World, her filmed murder is incredibly, for me, I thought it was kind of very grim and very unsettling. But then later you have some really warm moments with iBoy hugging Rockslide, and then them making fun of Dawkins and what have you. And Baldéon can walk back and forth between those two kind of tones very well. I think his art is kind of stunning to me. I've been really enjoying it.
I can remember him from probably my first memory of really noticing him was on Young Allies back in 2011. If we want to get really obscure.
That was him.
And I just remember he has a certain way of drawing heads and faces that can get a little gawky, and it turns it a little cartoony for me, even though I know comic books are inherently cartoony. But this transformation that he's been on in the past year or two, passed through his work with Gail Simone and Domino, which I think to this point was the greatest he's looked. And then I think he's just reached a totally other level on this book with Leah Williams, because his people are getting way more differentiated. Like the body types are so differentiated, the faces are, and he still is playing with that same expressiveness in the faces that he always has, but it's on a wider palette of people. And all of a sudden, I feel like maybe the things that people were appreciating about him through the years, because he's pretty popular, I would say, with fans, I like kind of get it now. I see it now. And I think Guru FX does a terrific job coloring him here, but I think just the simpatico between him and, or is it Guru FX? I don't want to credit. No, it's Israel Silva here on this issue is to color him. I don't want to ignore though that he's so simpatico with Leah Williams. You can just tell by the way that they tease each other on Twitter about the issues that she's has just fallen into a rhythm with him, and it's benefiting both of them because I think they're both doing their best work, like issue after issue here.
No, definitely. I mean, usually the synergy between writers and artists can translates really well when you read a particular issue. I mean, and I think like in this instance, they work really well. I mean, the other good pairing that I can think of my head right now is Percy and Cassara.
Yeah. Because Cassara is just like overachieving.
That's ridiculous.
The two of them is just like really mixing very, very, very well.
Well, let's get into some of the stuff that happens here. There's a couple of different resurrections. We're going to go through those, and then we'll talk about a little bit of the stuff with the team and the other characters. Mm-hmm. So we get Wind Dancer back because her death has been confirmed. Of course, she had died, I think, I don't know, this is the wrong crowd to ask, but I think she was already dead and back, and now she's dead again. But she's been resurrected from death in the Mojo-verse. And so we get this rebirth sequence, and we've seen a rebirth sequence a few times, and usually we get it from the focus on, Storm as the community leader, the preacher, right? Who's saying like, this is our sister. But we get a very different, much smaller community here because we see all of the people ready to welcome her back, which kind of ties into how much this generation of mutants has lost, not only in the stuff after House of M for them, but just all the way through Second Coming, and even as recently as Matt Rosensberg's run killed a few of them. And it's just like this really joyous moment of getting them together, and Williams and Baldéon make sure to pack the panels with folks here. We get Hellion, who's a major character who's friends with Wind Dancer Surge, Loa, who previously had just been sacrificed at the top of Rosenberg's run, Dust, Anol, who doesn't get any copy, but is Rockslide's BFF, and the list goes on and on as we move forward through the issue. And there's just a real sense of like community that feels more real, especially for people who've maybe been a little perturbed by that like whole, they're being welcomed back into a cult. This does not feel like a cult in the slightest to me. No. This feels like a family.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to nitpick a little bit here.
Okay.
Because I think the telepath is the telepath was supposed to, put the soul back to Wind Rider was missing here. She just came out from the egg and that's done. So it could have happened off screen, but off panel. But but I just thought that was.
Is it always supposed to be Xavier, or is it like whoever's got the Cerebro on?
The only time that was, Harry, you're going to say something?
No, I just assumed it was always Xavier who did it, but I didn't know if he had to physically be in the location to do it. That was, I thought it was more like a come and go kind of thing.
Yeah, everybody's doing more remote work now, so I don't know if he's going to be in the room.
Look, he's a busy guy. He's got a lot on his plate, and you know what? This is for them. This event's for them.
Well, the only time that Professor X wasn't involved was Jean resurrecting Professor X. That was the only time I can remember. Yeah. But
if you go down that line of thinking, if they're, I don't know how frequently they're resurrecting mutants, but that means Xavier has got to be there like all the time. He definitely has a guest home right next to the growth pods.
That's the reason why there was a data page in HuffPost that talk about the resurrection timeline. Because, with Xavier being the only one, he gets tired, and therefore they need to train, the rest of the telepath to do it as a backup. And, once they have the entire engine going, they can resurrect the entire mutant population in X amount of time. I think that was done in HuffPost once.
I would read an issue of Xavier learning to delegate throughout the months, just finding ways to parse out the resurrections to different members of the crew. That'd be fun.
I would enjoy it if it went progressively lower and lower down the telepath chain. It starts with Jean and Emma, and then it's got Rachel, but then to the end we're just getting really, vague. What does it look like when Monet is in charge of a resurrection now? And we just keep going down to telepaths that get delegated and delegated.
Look, we've asked everyone else. We just got to come to you now. Just a couple of days a week. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, just a little bit of coverage. I was going to save this for later, but there is one telepath who's around during this resurrection, and it was easy to miss, I thought, with the dialogue and art, but Emma is just standing outside in silence this whole time. Nobody's thinking to bring Auntie Emma in for a hug. There's a lot of history there with this class of mutants, but I want to hear from the two of you rather than me just talking. Did you catch that? How soon did you realize it was Emma, who they were saying she's still outside, and then she was a really far away figure? When did you pick it up?
It took me a minute. For some reason I thought it was Jean Grey for a second. I don't know why, but like I also don't know that her history with that particular class. I just thought when they finally got to the moment that it was really interesting, but I was a little slow on the take. What about you, Tyler?
I mean, I was trying to figure out what the conversation was about, because the very first conversation with Elixir and Prodigy was talking about downstairs, upstairs, outside, inside, and I was like, okay, who are they talking about?
Yeah, it was almost like
want to
deliberately
come
vague.
in. Yeah, and then of course the very first panel of the lady in white, I was like, oh, of course it has to be Emma, because she came to Krakoa for the children. She said that explicitly in House of X number 5. Oh no, sorry, Powers of 10 number 5, and then and my guess is that was the reason why she didn't volunteer to go attack in Otherworld in X-Men 15, because she's there for the children. Someone has to be there for the children.
So yeah, I don't know all of Emma's history and characterization. What have you? I mean, I've read more modern stuff like Whedon's run and Gillen and Matt Fraction and all that. But what I like, so I didn't know how well her voice read. It's kind of hard with her because it's such a specific kind of thing. But just the idea of her like taking one mutant death now that hard is like such a great like just like a great moment. It really. I thought it was, even though I wasn't sure if the voice is right, I just loved the idea so much that like I thought that was probably my favorite part of the issue.
Peter, how many Young Mutant teams did Emma lose?
Oh, she kind of specializes in full team wipes. I mean, so look, there's a couple of layers here, and I think you two brought up to me two of the most interesting points about this. So I want to start with Harry's point about the voice. Leah Williams has a very specific idea, what I think is actually the right idea about Emma Frost. And you can go on Leah's Twitter and see her talk about Emma for years, even before she was in the X office. She believes in this Emma who cares too much on the inside, and that even though she can be evil and even though she can be terrible, part of her can't turn off her ambition and her drive. And sometimes it's an ambition and a drive to like love or protect or make people better. And to Leah, that's what connects Emma from Hellfire Club Emma to, Hellions and Massachusetts Academy Emma to Gen X Emma, and then on through the Emma that Harry's talking about. So many of you, I'm sure, have read the Joss Whedon run. You have to remember that run immediately follows Morrison's run, at the end of which Jean dies and Xavier kind of goes AWOL. And so Scott and Emma are kind of in charge. And that's reflected in this Academy X group of mutants, because Emma's kind of the headmistress and the lady in charge, and she's using the New Mutants like Danny, who she used to have a very antagonistic relationship with, to recruit them all. So this Danny Emma scene is like a throwback to like a specific sort of like 17 years ago X-Men comic book, and I immediately got the reference like in a second. And so it's Leah playing with that, and so if the voice of Emma sounds a little bit different, it's one of these moments where we have to ask ourselves, do we just want this kind of like arch kind of kill you with a smile Emma that we usually get, or do we actually want to get a little bit underneath of that into the character? And I mean, I love Emma Frost. I do want to get into the character, and I would read a Leah Williams Emma Frost book for eternity, for 100 issues. Like, I'll give you my credit card right now. So so I was like just buzzing with excitement to get this scene.
That's it felt just such like a nakedly emotional moment for her that I kind of it felt because this whole era is so much. I don't want to say calmer, but more, they have a chance to breathe and kind of be more open. Maybe she doesn't have to be that, is kind of blocked and repressed and what have you. So I took it more as like, she has finally had a chance to like open up a little bit, in that super down moment where she lost one of her kids, but
And just the art there too, not only the way that she's written, but the way that she's kind of shadowed from above, and her own hair and the tree cover is shadowing her face. We only get this kind of tiny sketch of what her expression is. I think Baldéon, I can't think of another time I've seen Baldéon draw that way. Like, it really, I was like, had to check, like, did we get like Marcos Martin or somebody like to get in for a page here? Because it was just so different and classic. Yeah. But now I want to come around to Tyler's point. Gosh, now I might have lost it. Hold on, let me like, reassemble.
What to say?
Yeah, about the generations and her. I guess I kind of covered it in talking about Harry's point, in that like she's been involved with all of these mutants. They don't probably think of her as a headmistress except for maybe Hellion, but
Gen X too.
Yeah, Gen X. I mean,
Banshee. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's kind of been their parent way more than Xavier or anywhere else. And so it's really read to me that if we were going to see somebody really kind of both celebrate Wind Dancer coming back and also really seriously mourn the loss of Rockslide for who he was, the only two characters that really could accomplish that would either be Anil or Emma. And I think it's got more heft with it being Emma.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's also a nice continuity to from the scene in X Factor 4, where I think Emma was the only one who said that. So he effectively died.
Yeah,
she was the only one in the Quiet Council who said that.
Now I remember what I wanted to talk about, what you said, Tyler. The whole For the Children thing, it makes Powers of X hit so much harder. Like that, it literally is why she's here. That whole weight of all her full team wipes, all the dead kids. Like we can say that it's to get Shaw or to manipulate people or whatever, but like Emma gets all her kids back. And this moment, I think, like plugged right into that moment in Powers of X in such a fascinating way that when you said it, I just got like chills. Like it is for the children. Yeah. Okay.
Book is really good.
Yeah, right. It's
a good book.
Really good comic book. So look, this is a natural, I think, transition to talk a little bit about Rockslide. We got a rare use, Tyler, of Rachel's actual mutant power, which is her chronoskimming ability, which most X-Men authors, I think, don't even know exists.
No, definitely. I mean, it was mentioned like in X Factor 1.
By Leah Williams also.
Yeah. And well, Leah Williams, through Rachel, told the readers that this is one of my powers, which nobody seems to remember. That was a pretty funny scene. I mean, it's kind of breaking the fourth wall without breaking the fourth wall. But I am a little bit confused here because initially we were thinking that this Rockslide is a scrambled version of him from all the different dimensions. But here it seems to point to something else. Like, what do you guys think about this?
Yeah.
Like, is he a baby, a newborn in a mature body, or like what is happening here?
No, that's a good point, because the book totally like positions him as like a blank slate where it's just straight newborn. And you're right that like when I read Powers X of Swords, I thought that it was going to be this odd mishmash of different rock slides and what have you, which I don't know what that would look like, but this is a much more like a more familiar kind of archetype with just like he's in scratch and he's just messed up.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, I think about, we recently in one of our other series was talking about Magneto as a baby, right? And that Maureen McTaggart made him a baby, and then he comes back, but he's still Magneto fundamentally, even though she had some designs on doing some tampering with him. And so I guess I was reflecting on, does it make a difference if Rockslide has been reset to kind of like a blank mind as our Rockslide versus being reset to a blank mind as like multiversal Rockslide? And I don't know that we know the answer yet, but I think that's kind of like the intriguing thing that's set up here. Like, what would be the difference us having raised Magneto from a baby from 616 versus raising Magneto from a baby that got regressed from one of the other places? And I know it's not exactly the same, but it just made me think about that because it's been present in our conversation recently.
Yeah.
I mean, and like the way Rachel reached the end of his timeline basically is telling us a definite yes, this is not going to be reversed no matter what you guys can kind of think of, because this is where it starts. And
right, there's no more. I love the analogy. Like, there's no more tape. As somebody who is old enough that I learned audio editing on actual cutting of tape, Harry's laughing or collecting.
Nothing to say.
Journalism experience. That like, yeah, when you're out of tape, you're out of tape. And I just thought it was like a perfect analogy. It just made me really smile because I've been there at the end of the reel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible that. I mean, I would imagine we're all spitballing, but the idea that like if he grows up, he's going to be in a different person and personality than the one in the past. So that might be where this is going, but it is a little muddled right now where I'm not, but I like the idea in this issue, the way they've posited it. I like where it's going to go.
Yeah, I'm not mad about it. I'm not, I'm not having a, like, those darn editors moment. I'm just like, oh, okay, now we're going to see how this plays out. And we do mention ever so briefly that Gorgon's resurrection, he's acting strangely. That's the only other one.
What's
Harry?
up with that? I want to know everything about that. Like I was like, okay, let's circle back to this, because that was like one part of X of Swords. Because like I think Gorgon's an interesting character in this new status quo, not so much the Millar stuff, but like if they're gonna bring him back in a different way, like I want to know what's happening there. So if it's in this book, that's awesome.
My guess is he is reserved for Hickman. So that's going to be addressed in X-Men. Yeah. That's my guess. I mean,
yeah. But it'd be fun if he's in this. I just hope he's really nice, like a super nice guy.
No, he's now Cardinal. I don't fight anymore.
Yeah,
I'm not picking out my sword. Yeah.
So, the resurrections took up a lot of space in this issue, but not all of the space. So I think we have two more big chunks to talk about. One is what's going on with the X Factor team themselves, and the other one is like all the other stuff, like the prom and all the moments of everybody kind of sitting around in the Boneyard. So before we even get past that, there's the actual data page for the Boneyard. And whenever we get to a data page, I do like King of Receipts, Tyler, to start off our discussion. So Tyler, without just having people reread the page, what do people need to go back and pay attention to on the page?
Well, the only thing that, the line that jumps out at me is right at the end, where it says exterior can become spiked or angular should outside defense become necessary. I mean, I'm like, okay, wait, this is on Krakoa. So someone is going to be invading Krakoa so that they need to protect themselves, or, some other things.
Or someone on Krakoa is going to want to get into the Boneyard for some reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, so I thought that, this is like, a seed of a story that is being planted, like, way maybe in the future. And then the other thing is like, I noticed that Daken doesn't have his own room. He's in a guest room.
That's a real...
It's just like,
That's a real Wolverine kind of thing, whereas he just kind of hangs out, sleeps wherever. That seems like a genetic.
No, but not anymore, because he has a room that has no doors now.
That is true. He's somewhat committed now. But one of my favorite things about that data page is how it immediately transitions to the same design of the Boneyard, showing like everyone what they're up to. Like it's just a great like way to show like the abstract like basic design elements, and then how they're actually using it in real time, which I think was super fun.
Yeah, there's one other thing that I noticed is in the naming convention. There's something called alveolar, and the word is a little bit strange, so I actually Googled it, and I found that it is the bony ridge that contains the sockets of the upper teeth. So it's part of a biological thing. So that leads me to think that is the Boneyard Krakoa's tooth, because it can grow too, right? Remember, it can. So that was the thing that I was like,
I have to admit, when I sometimes when I see a proper noun in a comic book and the word is capitalized, I'm like, made up word, and then you actually looked it up and it meant something. I that totally caught me off guard. But I want to push into Harry's point, like, if this eluded you in your first read, if you go back and read, Baldéon actually mimics the data page in the layout of the next two pages, which again, I don't think we've seen anybody do yet.
No,
I don't think we've seen anybody echo a data page in the artwork of the issue.
Like, it's really smart. It's like one of my favorite data pages by far now. It's just such a good use of these things that have been hit and miss. I feel more hit than miss, but like this is just, it's connecting that more clinical stuff that Hickman introduced with the warmth of this writer and this cast of characters. It was really elegant, I thought.
And I thought it was tricky to begin with, because it's a page of conversations that don't read sequentially. And then you do the page turn and you realize that each one of them, it probably actually read better in a physical issue than on digital. Because when you page turn, you realize that the conversations are kind of continuing across per story of the building, which is like so clever.
I know.
It's crazy that we're over a year into this and there's still artists that are like finding new ways to interact with this paradigm of layout that Hickman and Muller have kind of birthed with the idea of the data pages.
As you mentioned in one of our previous episodes, that every writer would use the data page differently, and in most cases is to their strength. They cannot mimic Hickman's in his charts and maps and stuff like that. Charts. But they do what they excel in. and I mean, this is one really interesting one, even though it has charts. And I mean, not really a charts, but a floor plan, a blueprint. But it also, in it, I think it also seeds like future ideas and some what was the thing that I was is that Chekhov's gun?
Right, yeah, which we talk about all the time.
Yeah. So it's like seeding things here, and then maybe it will come out to play, and then you'll be like, oh yeah, this is what happens, and that kind of thing.
Well, look, I do want to talk about, with Harry, perhaps the remaining community stuff, but since you talked about writers using data pages to their best effect, I've got to talk about the second data page. It took my breath away. I actually had, for those who don't know, who haven't been on this channel since 2009 when it was started, I'm a singer-songwriter, and that's why I got on YouTube to begin with. And I still am an active songwriter. I just don't have many places to play in Wellington. And I just started writing this song called Shrink to Fit, about this feeling of trying to have to shrink yourself into somebody's conception of you in order to have them keep loving you, right? And I literally had written this song the night before, and I have this little demo video of my computer, and then I open up this issue, and Leah writes this data page that starts, every day you wake up in a smaller box. And the way she's captured it, it doesn't matter if you felt this way in a romantic relationship or at work or with a friend. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if I've felt this emotional about something in a comic book for a really long time. Maybe one of you can talk for a little while.
Yeah, no, it really kind of, I'm not going to go as far as like it devastated me, but it definitely made me think about those times where you feel like a relationship in both personal and romantic is like irreparable, even though it usually isn't. It's just the feeling that you can't take something back and the box gets smaller. And I finished reading and I was just like, oh geez, like I have a lot to think about. Like I stared out the window no, I agree. It's like incredibly well done and kind of haunting.
Yeah. But who is it?
Someone who's having a really bad day. I mean, like someone who's really just needs a hug, and I don't know, but I mean, do we think it's a character that hasn't been established yet, and in the series, or someone that we know already?
I mean, given the amount of characters that Leah is playing with, coming from a specific era. Which unfortunately I'm not very familiar with. Maybe Peter could point, like, is there someone that you think would fit in there, like, well?
I haven't got the slightest idea. I don't know.
It felt like, I don't know about y'all, how you read it, but like, it felt like the narrative of that page was, it started off with someone becoming really down, and then by the end has been broken to wanting to take some sort of action, and felt very threatening by the end that like something was going to happen. So I feel like it's got to be connected to the cliffhanger, but we can get to that later.
It could. Well, look, I think, this issue is clearly so packed with stuff that we could keep going and going. This is almost a full length episode just about this issue. So I'm gonna say it's newbie's choice here, Harry. What other community things should we dig into with our last couple of moments on this? Should it be Dakin with Aurora? Should it be the prom? Should it be where do you want to go?
I feel like just the culmination of the book is the fireworks show at the end with Aurora, Northstar and his sister just sort of shining bright and everyone kind of being united in that moment. I feel like it just brings everything together. And with Rockslide just saying, I believe he said beautiful or what have you. Like it just, we've talked a lot about just how this was like the most group culture heavy issue, I think, in a while of these books. And just that moment where everyone's present seeing the same thing. I mean, that's just a very common thing to do in stories, but it worked so well. Like that was like just firing on all cylinders for me at that point.
There's a lot of Twitter consternation I discovered when I asked the question about what they thought was going to happen when they touched, because when they touch they create this blinding light. And nobody on Twitter can quite figure out what Leah was referencing here. Clearly something, because she's always got her facts in order. But, Aurora had been experimented upon by Sasquatch to kind of make it so her powers would be effective without Northstar. But then Aurora has her own issues with her sanity. In a Mike Carey annual of X-Men in 2007, they rebuilt her personality as well as Northstar's to try to get around her trauma. So I went back and reread that. Somebody online, whose name I have here, and I told them that we would give their name. So let me find it. Pointed out that also that she was captured and experimented on by the children of the Vault at one point, and so maybe it connects to that. But there's clearly something that not all of us eagle-eyed X-Men fans even were able to catch here. And that person on Twitter is a life less random. They are at the actual Barry, and they came to my rescue with some major Aurora superfan knowledge. So thank you so much, the actual Barry. But I actually wasn't sure what they thought was going to happen when they touched. But Northstar's point is like, well, it'll be fine now because you've been resurrected.
That's funny because for me, I just figured it was one of the many things in X-Men lore I hadn't read. So I was just like, oh, I guess they couldn't touch and now they can. And it's just like a sweet moment between characters. So I was just like, I guess, Tyler and Peter will tell me when we're on the show. But
all of X, I went straight to the Xavier Files Twitter and I was like, help me. And people did not know the answer.
I did not know this as well. And the other thing I kind of want to ask you guys, did Aurora and Duncan...
I feel like we'd see it. Well, I don't know if we'd see it, but I feel like you'd see like something more, something more intimate. I don't know. I feel like they're taking like the slow approach with whatever that relationship's going to be. So like, I feel like it's just like small moments they're going to keep building.
Because her hair was different.
I don't know. I read the art at the bottom of the page that she was in the doorway, and then when she says, I know that she slips back out of the doorway to go talk to Northstar. Like I read it as though, even though it says later, and she's but she's in the same outfit, and she's out, and she's got her hair tied up, and so I kind of just assumed, but who knows? And I'm sure if something happened or it didn't, Leah will take us there. So Tyler, is there anything else that we would be remiss if we didn't mention, because we got to wrap up on X Factor, I think.
I have something.
Oh, Tyler with the last minute.
Prodigy. He said that he was murdered and then resurrected. That is something new, right?
He thinks. He's not even sure. How can you not be sure if you were... I mean, he knows he was resurrected, obviously, because his powers are working again. But how do you not know what happened to you?
Sounds like a job for X Factor, if you ask me.
Well, look, that will mark the end of our discussion of this issue, X Factor number 5. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be back with a separate episode to talk about what's going on in Hellions number 7. So please tune back in for that one, or you can just hear everything all in one go on our Crushing Comics podcast. So for myself, for Tyler, and our special guest, Harry, on Fariha's behalf, I thank you so much for joining us for This Week in X about X Factor number 5.